You know that feeling when you and your partner are saying the same things over and over in a conversation or an argument, and it's like, here we go again. You can feel that it's going nowhere, and it feels so frustrating. You just want to come to an understanding or some sort of agreement together, but instead, you're stuck in the same exhausting cycle, and you've been here before. Let's talk about why that happens and the big mistake that's keeping you stuck. And of course, the way out, because there is a way out. I'm Lindsay. This is Loving with Intention. We are going to dive right in and chat about this so I can show you exactly what to do instead of this big mistake. You can literally use this in your next conversation. So I love this so much. Someone actually reached out and asked this question, and she shared that, I'm often talking about how we might have conversations where things go sideways, or somebody might end up yelling, or there's criticism or defensiveness. And she said they don't really have that in their relationship, but they do have these challenging or tough conversations that can span for days. They just don't go anywhere. They just kind of keep repeating themselves and they feel stuck. And she's like, is there any way that we can speed this up, or what can we do differently? We know what not to do and we stay away from a lot of those things, but what can we do to get different results and not just keep repeating ourselves over and over? So I love this question so much, and it can be used for exactly what she's describing, and also it can be used for those even more challenging conversations, things that might tend to go sideways. So just imagine when we're talking about this, that you and your partner are on opposite ends of a bridge and you are yelling at each other. You're shouting at each other because you have to. You're on opposite sides of a bridge, but no one's actually stepping forward. So you can't really hear each other. How are you supposed to meet in the middle? How are you supposed to come up with an agreement when you're just shouting on either side of the bridge? So the mistake that we make, sometimes even before we enter the conversation, and often when we're just in it, is that we just want to be heard, which makes all of the sense in the world. Just because it's a mistake doesn't mean that it's a bad thing. It just doesn't help our conversation. So of course we want to be heard. We want to feel seen by our partner. We want to feel understood. We want to feel like they get us. So it makes so much sense. And when both people are shouting their perspective from opposite ends of the bridge, no one's actually getting any closer to understanding or coming to any sort of middle ground. So just imagine, like, in your relationship, this might look like maybe you say to your partner, by Wednesday every week, I would really love to have our weekends planned out. And your partner responds with, I'd rather be spontaneous. Why do we have to schedule everything? That just feels way too rigid. And you respond with, because nothing ends up happening when we don't plan. And they respond with, that's not, I should get my partner here to like role play with me. And they respond with, he's not here though. So should I ask him? Maybe I'll ask him. And they respond with, that's not true. We do so many things on the weekend. And you respond with, but I'd like to do this. And they respond with, but we could be doing so much more. And it just keeps going in circles. And this could be a conversation that keeps coming up because you never really get anywhere. You want to plan, they want to be spontaneous. And it's like, it can feel like looking at that, well, there is no solution. One of us is really going to have to give up something. But the mistake is that we're literally in this conversation just to be heard. That's all we want, is to be heard. And if we both want to be heard, that means that we're both not really hearing. So this pattern is really about, like, I tend to pull up these puppets when I'm working with, they're not puppets, they're my hands. I just want to clarify that I don't actually use puppets when I'm working with clients. But the like, hear me, no, hear me, hear me, hear me. And of course we stay stuck. So the way out of the hear me pattern is called heart listening. And I've talked about this before, but let's like really get into it. So this is what helps you get towards the middle ground. Heart listening is taking the first step on the bridge, and just one person has to do that, gets to do that in order to start to connect. So the first step is bringing in so much curiosity, because you might not really get it. You might not really get why this is important to them. And we're going to stick with that example of making plans versus not making plans for the weekend. So you want to hear them. You want to get compassionately curious. You want to ask questions because you are seeking to actually understand. So that might look like asking them, like, what's so important to you about being spontaneous? And what feels good to you to do on the weekend? And you're just getting curious. And when they share that with you, the first part of heart listening, hearing, the H in heart listening is hearing, and you can just reflect that back. Because how good does it feel to have somebody say, oh, like you really like being spontaneous because it makes you feel energized and you don't feel like stuck with a plan, and you can just repeat back to them what they say. And then the next piece, so that's the E in heart listening, is empathizing. And empathizing, validating, I love this because this doesn't have to mean that you agree with them. This doesn't mean that you are making a plan right now. This just means that you're dropping into their experience. You know your partner as a human. And when you hear them say, I don't want to plan, it feels too rigid, I feel locked in, that probably makes sense to you given what you know about them. You might stop and think like, yeah, that's kind of how you roll in life. It makes sense that you wouldn't want to plan and that makes you feel restricted. Again, this isn't you like giving up your position. This is just you stepping forward on that bridge and being like, okay, yeah, I get it. It makes sense to me that having all these plans laid out for you doesn't feel good. It makes you feel really stuck. It doesn't make you feel excited for the weekend because there's no room for like excitement or adventure. I can see how that would feel for you when I bring up making plans. Just for your partner to hear that, it's like, you get me, you know me. And that is so powerful. And then the A in heart listening is appreciation. And this can just be where you share like, I love that about you. I really appreciate that you're spontaneous because you often like come up with things for us to do that I wouldn't have thought of. And I love how you're just like ready to roll at the drop of a hat drop of a hat, whatever that thing is. This is where you just get to give them so much appreciation because often when we are stuck in hear me, no, hear me, we're not really appreciating each other. We're not feeling seen. We're not feeling heard at all. So we just get to pause and give each other love. Because when you really want to come to an agreement or an understanding, which makes so much sense that you do, the only way to meet in the middle is for someone to start moving forward. And like I said, because you are here listening, watching right now, you get to be the person who does that. And it can be freaking hard to be the one to go first. And it really makes such a big difference. So when you take that first step, your partner often feels safer to step forward too. Again, you don't have to agree with their side in order to validate them and get it. One person moving forward can break this pattern of staying stuck. When someone finally feels understood, they're more likely to start understanding you, wanting to get curious about your side, wanting to validate and appreciate you. It is so much more likely to happen if they feel seen and understood. And I know often people will ask me, like my clients will ask me if I'm working with individuals, what happens if I take those steps, but they just stay right there? They don't actually take those steps. You can still validate and see their side. You can say things like, oh, I never saw it like that before. Or I just paused and really thought about that and I get it. I get your side. And I love sharing and I love doing this with my partner too. Like we've built this into our relationship. Just being able to say like, I can see that we both have very different experiences of this same situation. And now I can see that neither of us are wrong. So I was trying to get my point across, trying to make it the right point. But the reality is that these are both our experiences. They're both valid. And when we can really like name that and tell our partner that I'm not trying to convince you that my way is right, then that can also help our partner just sort of relax into the conversation and make it more of a conversation instead of a hear me battle. Every step forward brings you closer to making an agreement, co-creating an agreement. You're modeling the behavior that creates change. You're showing them like, I can show up for you. Sometimes this takes time for people to get on board with this. You might not feel seen and heard right away, but this is how we start to change this pattern. And oh my goodness, just if we think about like being in those cyclical cycles of conversations, it makes so much sense that we can't come to an agreement if we're just wanting to feel seen and heard. When we're stuck in that please hear me mode, our brains are literally not in creative problem solving mode. We can just see, either we make plans or we don't because we just want to be heard. We're not in creative co-creating solution mode. We're even if things aren't heated or super intense, we're kind of in a survival mode because we're just fighting to be understood. Nervous system might be a little bit triggered. So we really are just, I need to be heard. I need to be understood. I need to be seen. Only when we feel truly seen can we relax enough to open up to new possibilities and solutions, which is how we co-create agreements. And I mean, just think about it. Think about how easy it is to make a loving agreement on something that works for both of you when you don't even feel like your partner gets why it matters to you in the first place. It's probably not that easy. You're not like willing to get rid of your ideas or your thoughts if you don't even feel like they tried to get you. You know that relief that you finally feel when somebody is like, I get you. Just imagine your partner saying, Oh, that's why it's so important to you. That makes so much sense. Huh, it's like a weight off. Like, you get it. I can stop explaining myself. You get me. That's when you can stop defending your position and start exploring the possibilities together. But until that point happens, you are just two people standing on opposite ends of the bridge, shouting at each other. Bless your hearts and bless mine too. Bless all of ours, because we all get into patterns like this in our relationships because we are human. We are living the human experience. So, again, really being able to take that step forward, put your stuff aside for even just a few minutes and truly drop in. And it can't just be this forced thing. This is like taking deep breaths and getting into your heart and being like, okay, I'm choosing to do things differently. I'm choosing to get curious about how this feels for you. Because I know if you don't feel seen or heard, we're not going to get anywhere. This is the first step. Again, it can be difficult to be the one to take the first step, and this is how change happens. And it takes practice, and just celebrate every win along the way. And remember, the only way to meet in the middle of that bridge is for someone to start moving, so that gets to be you. So again, heart listening, hearing, being curious, reflecting back to them, empathizing and validating, and then appreciating. Oh, just giving them so much appreciation. And then the next piece, the R in heart listening, is relaxing into your heart, taking a nice deep breath. And then the T in heart listening, that togetherness and teamwork. We can only get to togetherness and teamwork if we feel seen and heard. So that is the way out of these really long conversations. And sometimes it can feel like you are on wildly different pages. And once you feel seen and heard, you're like, oh, we actually don't have to do like this big crazy thing to change everything and fix this. We can just make little tweaks along the way. It was just about feeling seen or heard. So I'm sending all the love into your day. Your intentional action for this week is to use heart listening. Find a place to use it. It doesn't have to be in some challenging conversation. We can use heart listening in all of our conversations. So just find a place to get curious about what's going on for your partner, reflect that back, empathize, validate, appreciate. It's going to feel so good. And I am so here. If you have any questions at all, pop them in the comments, pop your thoughts in the comments, subscribe if you are loving it. Again, sending all the love into your day. And remember that nothing changes if nothing changes. So let's have an intentional week.